Hello, shining stars. Thank you for coming back for another chapter of our story. If you remember where we left off yesterday, it was the part where Miggery Sow was being sent into the dungeon to serve some food to somebody down there. And the last thing that we read was, "Reader, for the answer to Cook's question, you must read on." And Cook's question was, what becomes of someone who goes into a dungeon smiling? Let's see what becomes of her in chapter 31, A Song in the Dark. The terrible foul odor of the dungeon did not bother Mig. Perhaps that is because sometimes when Uncle was giving her a good clout to the ear, he missed his mark and delivered a good clout to Mig's nose instead. This happened often enough that it interrupted with the proper workings of Mig's olfactory senses. Olfactory is a fun word to say, and it means her nose, how her nose works. And so it was that the overwhelming stench of despair and hopelessness and evil was not at all discernible to her, and she went happily down the twisting and turning stairs. "Gor," she said, "it's dark, ain't it?" "Yes, it is, Mig," she answered herself. "But if I was a princess, I would be so glittery, light-like, there wouldn't be a place in the world that was dark to me." At this point, Miggery Sow broke into a little song that went something like this. "I ain't the Princess P, but someday I will be the P-ha-he. Someday I will be." Mig, as you can imagine, wasn't much of a singer, just like your teacher. More of a bellower, really. But in her little song, there was, to the rightly tuned ear, a certain kind of music. And as Mig went singing down the stairs of the dungeon, there appeared from the shadows a rat, wrapped in a cloak of red and wearing a spoon on his head. Do you know who that is? "Yes, yes," whispered the rat. "A lovely song. Just the song I have been waiting to hear." And Roscuro quietly fell in step beside Miggery Sow. At the bottom of the stairs, Mig shouted out into the darkness, "Gor, it's me, Miggery Sow. Most calls me Mig, delivering your food. Come and get it, Mr. Deep Downs." There was no response. The dungeon was quiet, but it was not quiet in a good way. It was quiet in an ominous way. It was quiet in the way of small, frightening sounds. There was the snail-like slither of water oozing down the walls, and from a darker corner there came the low moan of someone in pain. And then, too, there was the noise of the rats going about their business, their sharp nails hitting the stones of the dungeon, and their long tails dragging behind them through the blood and muck. Ew. Reader, if you were standing in the dungeon, you would certainly hear all of these disturbing and ominous sounds. If I were standing in the dungeon, I would hear these sounds. If we were standing in the dungeon together, we would hear these sounds and we would be very frightened. We would cling to each other in fear. But what did Miggery Sow hear? That's right, absolutely nothing. And so she was not afraid at all, not in the least. She held the tray up higher, and the candle shed its weak light on the towering pile of spoons and bowls and kettles. "Gor," said Mig. "Look at them things. I never imagined there'd be so many spoons in the whole wide world." "There is more to this world than anyone could imagine," a voice said from the darkness. "True, true," whispered Roscuro. "The old jailer speaks true." "Gor," said Mig. "Who said that?" And she turned in the direction of the jailer's voice. Let's do one more chapter because these are kind of short. Chapter 22, Beware of the Rats. The candlelight on Mig's tray revealed Gregory, the jailer, limping toward her, a thick rope tied around his ankle, his hand outstretched. "You, Gregory presumes, have brought food for the jailer?" "Gore," said Mig, and she took a step backward. "Give it here," said Gregory, and he took the tray from Mig and sat down on an overturned kettle that had rolled free from the tower. He balanced the tray on his knees, and he stared at the covered plate. "Gregory assumes that today, again, there is no soup." "Eh?" said Mig. "Soup!" shouted Gregory. "Illegal!" shouted Mig back. "Most foolish," muttered Gregory as he lifted the cover off the plate. "Too foolish to be born, a world without soup." He picked up a drumstick and put the whole of it in his mouth and chewed and swallowed. "Here," said Mig, staring hard at him. "You forgot the bones." "Not forgotten, chewed," said Gregory. "Gore," said Mig, staring at Gregory with respect. "You eats the bones? You are most ferocious." Gregory ate another piece of chicken, a wing, bones and all, and then another. Mig looked at him most admiringly. "Someday," she said, moving suddenly to tell this man her deepest wish, "I will be—" What's her deepest wish, do you remember? That's right, "I will be a princess." At this pronouncement, Chiaroscuro, who was still at Mig's side, did a small, deliberate jig of joy. A jig is a kind of dance. In the light of one candle, his dancing shadow was large and fearsome indeed. "Gregory sees you," Gregory said to the rat shadow. Roscuro ceased his dance. That means he stopped. He moved to hide beneath Mig's skirts. "Eh?" shouted Mig. "What's that?" "Nothing," said Gregory. "So, you aim to be a princess? Well, everyone has a foolish dream. Gregory, for instance, dreams of a world where soup is legal." "And that rat," Gregory is sure, "has some foolish dream of his own." "If only you knew," whispered Roscuro. "What?" shouted Mig. Gregory said nothing more. Instead, he reached into his pocket and then held his napkin up to his face and sneezed into it once, twice, 3 times. "Bless you!" shouted Mig. "Bless you! Bless you!" "Back to the world of light," Gregory said, and then he balled up the napkin and placed it on the tray. "Gregory is done," and gave it to Mig. "Done, are you? Then the tray goes back upstairs. Cook says it must. You take the tray to the Deep Downs, you wait for the old man to eat, and then you bring the tray back. Them's my instructions." "Did they instruct you, too, to beware of the rats?" "The what?" said Mig. "The rats." "What about 'em?" "Beware of them," said Gregory. "Right," said Mig. "Beware the rats." Roscuro, hidden beneath Mig's skirts, rubbed his front paws together. "Warn her all you like, old man," he whispered. "My hour has arrived. The time is now. Your rope must break. No nibbling this time. Rather a serious chew that will break it in 2. Yes, it is all coming clear. Revenge is at hand." Come back tomorrow and we'll see what happens. Thank you. Bye. I miss you guys.